Ridgewater, Montana wasn't the sort of town where newcomers blended in. The mountains surrounding it felt like walls, and the handful of dirt roads leading in and out made the community feel more like a giant family than a map location. So when Dr. Daniel Hartman arrived in March of 2023, his presence turned heads instantly. He introduced himself with a firm handshake, steady eye contact, and a soft, reassuring voice. His clinic, once the abandoned office of a retired dentist, was renovated in less than 2 weeks. The townspeople were impressed. He treated ranch workers for free when they couldn't pay. He delivered a baby during a blizzard when the county ambulance couldn't make it out. He removed a fishhook from a teenager's eyebrow without scolding or judgment. He became a local hero. But for some residents, particularly the older ones, something about the young doctor stirred an uneasy familiarity. He looked like someone they once knew, someone they had mourned, someone who shouldn't be alive. One morning, after a routine appointment, 76-year-old George Milton walked out of Hartman Family Clinic looking pale. He told his neighbor he remembered nothing from the visit except Hartman's voice telling him to stay calm. Later that evening, he felt weak and confused. He brushed it off. 2 weeks later, another elderly patient mentioned waking from a routine checkup with a strange metallic taste in her mouth and a small bandage on her shoulder she didn't recall receiving. People talked, whispered, dismissed. Nobody wanted to suspect the town's only dependable doctor. Nobody wanted to believe something was wrong. Until 2 bodies changed everything. Back in 1994, Ridgewater had been smaller, quieter, and even more trusting. On a crisp October afternoon, during the Walker family's annual pumpkin harvest, their 7-year-old son Ethan Walker vanished. He had been last seen chasing a stray dog toward the back of the property. Search teams combed the forests, creeks, and abandoned logging trails. Helicopters buzzed overhead for days. All they found was Ethan's little denim jacket snagged on a rusted barbed wire fence. His mother, Diane, kept his room exactly as it was for years, baseball posters on the wall, crayons scattered on his desk, a toy fire truck missing its ladder. Eventually, the family moved away, unable to bear the memory of empty space where their child should have been. The case went cold, but the memory never really died in Ridgewater. When Dr. Hartman stepped into town decades later, sandy hair, sharp jawline, faint scar above his eyebrow, older residents felt something twist inside them. They called it coincidence. They called it wishful thinking. But the truth was forming quietly, like a storm gathering behind a mountain. The storm broke when 2 elderly patients died unexpectedly, both days after routine checkups with Hartman. Their families demanded answers. The sheriff, reluctant but pressured, contacted state authorities, and once the state got involved, the cracks around Daniel Hartman's identity started to widen. His medical degree? Questionable. His license? Digitally verified but strangely inconsistent. His social security records? Only traceable back to 2012. And then there were the clippings, old, yellowed newspaper articles about Ethan Walker, hidden in a locked drawer of Hartman's clinic. Something wasn't right. Something was very, very wrong when investigators quietly collected a DNA sample from a coffee mug in Hartman's office. They didn't expect the result to be so conclusive. Dr. Daniel Hartman was Ethan Walker, the boy who vanished in 1994, the boy everyone believed was dead. Confronted with the evidence, Hartman's calm demeanor shattered. He told them the truth, at least the parts he was willing to share. He had been abducted by a reclusive drifter who lived deep in the Kootenai National Forest, a man known to no one and wanted by no one. The man couldn't have children and believed Ethan was given to him by fate. For years, Ethan grew up completely isolated, no schooling, no neighbors, no contact with the outside world, just the forest, the drifter, and a life he never chose. As Ethan grew older, the man tightened control, punishments, restrictions. A twisted ideology that the world outside was dangerous and that Ethan owed him obedience. When the man died unexpectedly from untreated pneumonia, Ethan, now a teenager, fled the cabin with the only possessions he had, A backpack, some cash, and the memory of a life stolen from him. With no identity, no documents, and no proof of who he really was, he reinvented himself. He worked odd jobs, saved money, bought forged papers, studied relentlessly, and discovered he had a peculiar gift, an obsession with human biology. An obsession born from survival. Born from trying to understand the man who had controlled him. But that obsession evolved into something darker. By the time he called himself Daniel Hartman, he had convinced himself that he had a special purpose, one that required research, experimentation, and secrecy. And Ridgewater, the town where he once belonged, was the perfect place to return, unnoticed, unchallenged. Until the experimentation went too far. The trial lasted nearly a year. The prosecution painted Hartman as a manipulative fraud, a man willing to experiment on vulnerable patients to validate his own theories. The defense tried to argue trauma, psychological conditioning, and years of captivity. The Walkers sat in the courtroom, watching a grown man they barely recognized, a man who was their son, and yet not their son at all. Ethan avoided their eyes. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter, medical fraud, human experimentation, practicing medicine without a license, and identity theft. He was sentenced to a long term in a federal facility with psychiatric evaluation. Ridgewater fell quiet after the verdict. The clinic closed. Its windows went dark. The sign out front faded with the seasons. Some locals still swear they feel uneasy driving past it at dusk, like the air is heavier, like the walls remember. Others say they still think of Ethan, the boy who disappeared, and wonder if things would have been different had the search party looked a little farther, searched one more day, pushed beyond one more hill. But most simply ask the question no one can answer. Was Ethan Hartman a victim, or was he something much darker, shaped by the horrors that once shaped him? Only Ethan knows. And he's not telling anymore.